Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel Smith. I'm President and CEO of Cooperative Network, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon on building an industrial hemp industry in the state of Minnesota. We are very pleased to have with us today Harold Stanislawski and Riley Gordon from the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute in Minnesota. Their firm develops new uses for agricultural products through science and technology, and they'll be discussing this exciting new crop. Before we start, a few things. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Cooperative Network. We are an association of cooperatives from 12 different business sectors in the state of Minnesota and the state of Wisconsin. We do government affairs, education, director training, and public advocacy for the cooperative system. We usually have, each year we have a series of conferences throughout the both states. And each year we, in collaboration with CoBank, we have our Cooperative Business Issues Conference in Minneapolis. This presentation today was to be on that for our CBIC conference this year, but of course, because of the COVID pandemic that we're all dealing with, that conference had to be canceled. So we're very happy to have the opportunity to present this information to our valued members, and very appreciative to Harold and Riley for joining us today. We're going to start with a few housekeeping things. One, you will see on your screen that we're asking what sector does your cooperative most identify with? If you could please take a moment to check that, and then we'll move forward from there. So I'll give you just a moment for that. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for this webinar, CoBank and CHS. All participants will be on mute, but you can use the Q&A section to ask questions. This webinar and all in the series will be posted online afterward for you to view on demand. And now a second poll question for your consideration. We'll leave that on the screen for a minute as well then. So thank you for that. And now I'm going to turn it over to our speakers, Harold and Riley. Thank you both for joining us today. As I said, they are with the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute based in Minnesota. Their firm helps develop new uses for agricultural products through science and technology, and by partnering with businesses and entrepreneurs to make ideas reality. They're going to talk to us today about the industrial hemp industry. This is an exciting new crop that we have all heard quite a bit about in the last couple years. And now I'm going to turn it over to Harold and Riley, and looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Just going to give you just a little bit of more background on myself and let my colleague Riley Gordon do the same. Again, my name is Harold Stanislawski. I'm a project development director with the Ag Utilization Research Institute. We'll tell you a little bit more about what we do in some slides that are coming up. We work very, very closely with the hemp industry that's developing in the state of Minnesota. And we're very excited to share with you some of the work that we've been doing in basically the last 2 to 3 years. So Riley, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Riley Gordon, originally from Brandon, Manitoba, Canada, where I studied physics up there. And then I came down in 2015 here to Minnesota to study civil and environmental engineering at the University of Minnesota, and graduated there in 2017 and have been working with AURI down in our Coproducts Lab ever since, coming up on 3 years now almost within the organization. So we work on bringing different waste streams from the agricultural sector into new products such as feeds, fertilizers, fuels, bringing those waste products up the value chain. We have a number of pieces of equipment, hammer mill, pellet mills, a number of different things. I'll kind of get into that a little bit into our presentation. But yeah, I kind of get pulled into the other areas as well, bio-based products, food, renewable energy projects as well. So it's been a pretty good experience, and hemp's been a big area that Harold and I have both been kind of taking a lead role here in our organization, and some of that work we'll get to report on today. So thank you for having us.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to turn off my camera now so I don't be a distraction, and we're going to get into the presentation. Building an industrial hemp industry in Minnesota is really key for us to advance this crop in our state altogether. So what AURI did, along with a number of partners, is start the process of looking at value chains for this crop. And we're going to get into it. We created a report that's roughly, I think it's 60 or 70 pages in length. And it will be shown at the end of our presentation where you can get copies of that presentation, which includes a good share of the information that Riley and I will share with you today. So our hemp initiative objectives were, we had a number of focus areas, you might say, on this. We worked closely with producers and processors to identify industry needs in order to move both the fiber, the seed, forward in the state. And we also looked at the analysis of the CBD oil, the hemp seed meal, the hemp flour, hemp fiber for quality control and identification of new uses, everything from fuel to feed to fiber and beyond. And of course, it's very important to identify the hemp-based markets and where they might be and where they are likely to be in the future. So we took a look at that, and the identify state of the industry for processing co-product approval for feed, because feed is a tremendously important aspect of the hemp industry, and we'll talk about that a little later in the slides. And then, of course, release the public report with findings of opportunities and hurdles for the hemp industry in Minnesota. Next slide. So who is AURI? It's the Ag Utilization Research Institute. We're 30 years old. We were created to basically foster long-term economic benefit through the development of new value-added uses for ag products. And that could be everything from fuels to new food ingredients, to feeds, and of course to bioplastics, resins, and a host of products such as that. Our locations in Minnesota, we have a number of them. I live in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, which is relatively close to Fargo, North Dakota. We have our headquarters located in Crookston, Analytical Labs in Marshall, Co-Product Lab in Waseca, Minnesota, and also a presence on the University of Minnesota campus in St. Paul. Our services are basically three in nature. Applied research and development. We do not do basic research. What we do is applied research, which is basically taking things that have been discovered and applying them in the field with commercialization and innovation. We're unique in the sense that we actually have scientists that work for us, from chemists, food scientists, co-product scientists, engineers, and product development specialists who can move this industry forward. And innovation and networking is key. We literally have hundreds, and not thousands, of contacts across the United States and in Minnesota in order to move product development forward. So AURI's Food Lab is comprised of basically three professionals. They're on your screen now. But we can do everything from food formulation and product development, nutrition facts, labeling, and such. And this is very important for hemp, by the way. Hemp has GRAS approval, generally recognized as safe. So we can develop food products, but they, of course, need labeling and nutritional analysis to be purchased at retail. We offer regulatory assistance on how to get that done and how to stay out of trouble. Sourcing ingredients and packaging is another service, so we can determine shelf life and the food product testing and thermal processes and product stability, scale up troubleshooting, and oftentimes working with a co-packer or a commercial kitchen to move the product forward. In the Waseca Coproduct Lab, where Riley works, they do a number of things over there, and they have a number of pieces of equipment that is so crucial to what we can do with hemp. We've added a piece of equipment there that Riley will talk about later called a decorticator that can separate the fiber components in the plant. So it's useful for the making of products. We're also very much interested in everything from animal feed to hempcrete to paper, bedding, absorbents, and so forth. And of course, we can make oil. The hemp seed hulls, spent flower stalks, and hurd is also analyzed for various uses and purposes. Next slide. So our focus areas, again, are food. And when it comes to hemp, that means oils, powders, and hemp hearts that can go into the grocery store and be used in commercial operations that have a need for them. We have a presence of a rather large Canadian company, Manitoba Harvest, that has offices in the Twin Cities and is doing a great job of moving hemp forward in our state. Bio-based products, that's where we're working on right now. We're going to show you some pretty exciting things that we're working on fiber and hurd applications. And co-products, there are several byproducts resulting from processing hemp, and of course they can be oils and they can be feeds and things like that to move forward. And then if we wanted to, we could make renewable energy out of hemp biofuels. It's really not profitable right now, but that is a possibility for us as well. Next slide. So to really get this thing started, we need to understand where we've been and where we're going. In 2014, when that farm bill was passed, it allowed research plot industrial hemp by state. Minnesota jumped on that almost right away. In 2015, the legislature created the Minnesota Industrial Development Act. It became law, and therefore it allowed the Minnesota Department of Ag to start issuing grower licenses to grow industrial hemp. So our first fields were started in 2016. AURI got involved immediately when that happened. And we started looking at this crop for new uses and how it could be commercialized in the state. And then shortly after that, time flies, the Farm Bill passed, industrial hemp production nationwide, as it has become an approved crop now by the United States Department of Agriculture to grow. So here we are in 2020, and the Minnesota hemp infrastructure continues to emerge at a rapid rate. And what do I mean by that? We have a number of CBD oil extraction, processing, and value chain networks in Minnesota already. I believe there's got to be at least 8, if not 10 extractors operating in the state that is willing to take CBD and process that oil into value chains now. Food grade industrial hemp oil and protein plants have been established. We have one in Waconia right now, a small plant that can turn the plant into oil and also protein at that site. Fiber shed development research and studies are going on right now. I'll share with you a little later in the presentation some of the early work that's being done on fiber and what our hopes for that fiber really could become rather significant in the state over time. And then feed characterization for future feed approval, which is pending. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then seed production and processing. We have, of course, a large seed industry in the state of Minnesota with corn and soybeans and dry edible beans and potatoes and such. The same thing will happen to hemp. We'll actually do breeding of genetics here, and that will create more value added and more interest as we fine tune the varieties for our climate. Next slide. So basically this is old already, this slide, but you might as well say that just about every state in the union now is pretty much on board with hemp. South Dakota passed it this past year, and So pretty much everybody's on board now, and the crop is being raised in some way, shape, or form, pretty much in every state, with maybe one or two still holding out. So these are just acres that were reported in 2019, and a number of state growers licenses that were issued. I was told this year by the Department of Ag that so far about 20,000 acres have been petitioned for by the state to grow this year in Minnesota. I don't know if all of them will get planted, but that's what's been requested right now, and that's what the Department of Ag is working with. Next slide. You know, for the group here today, I find this slide very, very important because what are the impediments and top challenges of moving a hemp industry forward, kind of nationwide, really? And first of all, you have to have processors to turn the crop into useful materials. And you can see on this slide that a large amount of folks believe that that is a major challenge. We too have found that to be an issue, but it's catching up some. The lack of banking services, there's been progress made there, but there are still bottlenecks in banking that slow the industry down some, but it is getting corrected, and very soon the credit cards and everything else that's needed to successfully run a business will eventually catch up, and it'll all get done. So that's moving along. Harvesting equipment, that too is well on its way. And then all of the other things that you see there are just other things that people are concerned about to move the industry forward. So we'll go to the next slide. So if we look at hemp as a food product, you know, that to me right now on the food side is one of the more, if there is such a thing as a stable market for hemp, the food product would be the most stable. Number one is because the products are already in the marketplace and they're on the grocery stores, and it's being sold here in the US. It's got GRAS approval, generally recognized as safe. So it's moving along. Now, there's a little bit of a glut of hemp in the marketplace. So contracts that are given to farmers now are mostly for organic production. The non-organic is pretty well filled, so there likely isn't any contracts to grow there. Riley is showing you here that we can get pretty good yields in Minnesota, 1,000 pounds, actually more than 1,000 pounds in many places in the valley and throughout Minnesota. And the conventional price is about 40 cents a pound now, and organic is $1 to maybe even as high as $1.15 a pound for organic production. And drying and cleaning are big concerns, and Riley will address that in a little bit later. Next slide. So what does hemp bring to the table as a food ingredient? Why would anybody be interested in hemp as food? Well, number one is hemp has this omega content that a lot of folks would like in their diet. It's high in omega, so that brings something to the table. It's non-allergenic for many, many people, so that's a positive for a lot of folks out there. And then, of course, it's a relatively high protein and non-GMO. And you can see that, at least on the hemp oil side, zero cholesterol, zero trans fats. So there's lots of good things about hemp. I get excited about at AURI that we can take hemp and we can blend it with other proteins and potential oils to develop, you know, even better products down the road. And that's what innovation is all about. And that's why the food side's pretty good. Riley, I'm going to turn this slide over to you to talk a little bit about this piece of equipment and what you do in Waseca.
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me all good?
Yep, you're coming across good.
Okay, great. So looking into some of the equipment needed for food processing of those projects that Harold was mentioning there for the oils and the powders and different things. So first you got to clean. And so we did a couple trips up to Canada near where I'm from in Manitoba, and some different tours of the cleaning facilities up there and what they're using to get to that Canadian standard of 99.95% purity. And usually it just consists of an indent grater or a length sorter, and then an air screener and a gravity table are the three that are kind of the most common. And then if the crop experiences large sclerotia or ergot issues, then a color sorter would be used, but a lot are getting by without those. And then to get to the cold press oil, as you see here, this is a cold oil press, and that's used to extract the oil from the seed, and then the meal comes out the end there, and then milling that down and then sifting to concentrate the protein into a 40 to 50% protein product is how that's done. And then the hemp hearts is another product. You've seen those probably in your grocery store. And that's a dehulled hemp seed. So it's taking the hull off the outside and with an impact dehuller. And then either just having them plain or flavored for different uses, either on salads or just a snack food in general. And then hemp milk is using the hemp hearts to similar process to creating almond or soy milk, where you use just a cheesecloth with the dehulled hemp hearts and hot water and push it through. And then the hemp beer is another opportunity there where you can either use the grain or actually just the terpenes or the aromatics of the actual flower for use in brewing. So a number of different opportunities there, and kind of a rough overview of the equipment needed to get there.
All right, we'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, there we go.
So to kind of wrap up the food side a little bit, what does the landscape really look like? And this data was 2017. The 2019 data should be out really soon. But the fact of the matter is there's real life markets here approaching $1 billion. It is over $1 billion now in the US on hemp-based product sales. And so this is looking pretty good. It's bound to grow. The beverage industry is very much interested in hemp for beverages for both athletes and just general purposes. So that's moving along pretty good. And the breads and grains and all the rest of it is also moving forward. So that's that. Now I want to get into the feed side of things. And I wanted to show this slide first because before we can move hemp feed into the value chain, we do have to have approval from the FDA to do so. And they work with a group called the Association of American Feed Control Officers or Officials. And this is a group that is sanctioned by the FDA to give these kinds of feeds control numbers, so then it can be sold commercially across channels. And there's quite a process to get a feed approved. It costs about $250,000 per species per ingredient to get AFCO approval or FDA approval, generally speaking. And we'll talk to you a little bit about what's happening out there and what we expect in the future. So we'll go to the next slide. But first off, if we look at hemp as an animal feed, does it work? Does it bring something to the table? And what's been done in other parts of the country? Well, a lot of these are Canadian work, a little bit out of Manitoba and Nova Scotia, but they have done quite a bit of work on laying hens and laying hen performance and egg yolk fatty acid content with hemp. Go back up there, Riley, please. I want to finish that one. And then, so that's turned out really well. And then feeding hemp seed meal to laying hens and hemp seed cake is a feed for growing cattle. All have been done. Next slide. And there's been studies done on industrial hemp for silage and also with the nutritive value of hemp meal for ruminants. So lots of work's been done. So we feel pretty confident that as FDA looks at this, there's a lot of evidence out there that says this is really a good feed for livestock, and we can move forward. So here in the United States, North Carolina State University researchers have wrapped up already this hemp and animal feed trial with the poultry sector. And if I was a betting person, I would say the poultry sector will be the first one to get AFCO approval to use this as an animal feed in that sector. Next slide. And the Colorado Department of Ag has a hemp feed coalition. A lot of states are involved in this because as we get approval by species per ingredient, if one person does it or one entity does it, then it's applicable to everyone. So that's the good news. You don't have to keep repeating it for every single company. It's universal across the board on these animal control numbers, and that's why working together is a good thing. Next slide. So I'm going to turn this one over to Riley again to talk about the opportunity for hemp and feed and pet food, which is pretty good.
Yeah, so going off of that, so here's some of the numbers that we've started to uncover in our lab when we started to look into hemp as a feed product. So we looked into the cake, the hulls after getting the heart product out, and you'd have the hulls left over, and then the hemp flour, the spent hemp flour after CBD extraction. So looking at that material after the oil has been taken off. And looking at it from a total digestible nutrient and crude protein perspective, all of those products would make for an excellent animal feed in theory. And really the hurdle that it's facing right now is that the feeding trials and that AFCO number. And once it has that under its belt, I think this is there's gonna be a big step for the viability of the hemp industry as a whole, to be able to utilize these byproducts and add value. So just this is just a slide showing we get all our testing actually done in Wisconsin at Dairyland Laboratories for our feed analysis, and then we do a market analysis here in AURI. We have an animal nutrition expert down at working with us in Waseca, Al Deering, and so he puts together these charts, and so it's using the total digestible nutrient and the crude protein levels to identify a theoretical market value for what these byproducts would be at different fluctuations in common commodities such as corn, soybean meal, and alfalfa hay. So kind of where the market is right now, the hemp cake would go for about $222 a ton, just in theory. And so that's a pretty good value there for these oil producers right now, that while they have an outlet for a majority of their oil, the protein market's not necessarily there to support the development or to support all that material. So having an outlet for that as a feed would be a huge opportunity. And so just some numbers here, for example. So just say, I know this is kind of on the low end, but 1,000 pound per acre yield of grain, 30% oil content is generally what a hemp seed is. And so if you get 90% extraction efficiency, which is close to what we saw in our Waseca lab, that's like 730 pounds of hemp seed cake. So it's a majority cake out of there. And so that'd be an estimated income of $81 per acre at that first kind of fluctuation market price there, when corn's $3.50 a bushel. So it just kind of puts it into perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, Riley, there, it's just important to say that, you still have the oil to sell and potentially the fiber to sell there. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that all you're going to make is $81 an acre. Right.
No, yeah, that's after the fact. That's just from the byproduct. So yeah, good point.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to hemp fiber. So this is another value chain that we've looked at pretty extensively here under our initiative, and one that we continue to be kind of probably the most excited about, other than feed, and just the amount of product opportunities that are out there with the hemp fiber is just it becomes pretty amazing once you start looking into it. And so, but it's probably the industry that has the kind of the least amount of traction, or least amount of traction right now. Just with it used to be a big industry here in Minnesota with lots of fiber plants and rope twisting plants and different things like this, utilizing that hemp fiber. But since the prohibition of the plant, it's really, a lot of that equipment has kind of gone, kind of disappeared, gone away, and we're really kind of left to figure this thing out kind of from scratch again. So that's kind of where we're at. But this is the modified graphic here we're looking at from a North Dakota State University paper, and we kind of added a few things at the top to kind of showcase where we're at right now, and that's kind of we're seeing some investor interest here in the state, and there's a couple groups that are investing in feasibility studies of what it takes to bring to grow hemp fiber, to bring it to a marketable product, what level of processing is needed for different end markets, how far do fields need to be away from a processing facility in order to remain profitable, answering these types of questions. And really it's pulling in existing fiber experts, either in this country or in other countries, to kind of help us out with these feasibility studies and gain insights into the processing equipment that's needed to do decortication, for example, properly, which is a kind of a method of separating the stalk from the outer fibers from the inner herd of the stalk. And that's kind of the first processing step, but then cleaning and scutching and hackling and all these kind of these common techniques in textiles and natural fiber industries that need to be done in order to bring these fibers to their different states for the end market. So answering those questions, and then once you have grower participation and you can put together processing facilities, and it can move forward into the diagram of all these exciting products. And this is a diagram that showcases a dual purpose crop. So you would extract the seeds and the grain first and go through either the hulling or the pressing for oil and all that. And then you take the stalks after, ret them, and then put them through processing to be able to produce fibers and herds. And then here's just a picture of kind of what that looks like. So this is a hemp stalk, and on the outer portion, it's about 30% by weight bast fiber, and then 70% by weight herd or an inner woody core. And it's pectins and lignins that hold those together very strongly. So doing a process called retting, where it allows the natural enzymes to eat away at those pectins and lignins and make the decortication process less energy intensive and time consuming, is a very important process there. Yeah. And so just quickly on some of the markets that it can reach. So textile market, the construction market, biocomposites market, and then kitty litter or animal litters, animal beddings is kind of an opportunity that exists today with just the herd itself, which is really closely resembles kind of an absorbent wood chip, I would say you could picture. Harold, did you want to say anything else on this one?
Well, I'm just going to say that what's good to know about this is that from an AURI perspective and the clients we deal with, we're likely going to be dealing with some of these areas here to innovate and develop products in Minnesota. And many of these products will be developed with existing industries that we already have here. And that's the exciting part. So, we network a lot. Next slide. Riley and I, we came across a company called Fiberace in Kentucky. They make hemp wood, beautiful, beautiful wood out of hemp. And this is one here that Minnesota also has the potential to innovate in this area with blending and hemp alone and all kinds of things to make this. This happens to be flooring, and there is the process. And Riley can say just very briefly about the process, but this is relatively straightforward, fairly simple type of work.
Yeah, why this is really neat is that decortication step that I just discussed is not actually needed for a product like this. They're actually just taking the stalks and introducing a bio-based binder or adhesive to them, and then putting it in a hydraulic press, putting it under 1,700 ton of pressure and just squeezing just through brute force into this wood with the binder in there. And so you wouldn't need that decortication and that cleaning, those time consuming and capital intensive really processes that you need to get those fibers for other applications. This is a low hanging fruit opportunity where you can really take advantage of the natural properties of the stalks. There's just another picture of the hempwood plant. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of go through a few of the different processing facilities that we know of here in the US. It's pretty limited, I would say. Right now there's nothing in Minnesota right now in terms of a processing facility. This one is Sunstrand out of Kentucky, and as far as we know, they're actually in a transitional period right now where they're not actually running their equipment or the business isn't currently running. But they were for a long time the kind of the leader in the U.S. for producing fiber in herds. They had a number of products. They had a natural fiber bad insulation product, and then they had this natural core board that was good for like interior decorating type applications. And then they also produced just mass quantities of hurd and fiber for different applications, and they were one of the only groups in the U.S. that provided that. So other than that, there is North Carolina has a group called Hemp Incorporated. They have called Industrial Hemp Manufacturing. We don't know a ton about this group. We do know they have this decortication setup going on there, and haven't heard a whole lot from them in the past at least year now. But they're on the map. And then Basscore in Nebraska. We've talked with this group several times. This is a picture of their step cleaner that they use to further clean the fiber after the first decortication step. And you can see on the ground, there's a bunch of clean fiber there. And we've networked with the individual quite a bit that built this piece of equipment. He's been out to a couple events of ours here in Minnesota, and he's on to actually a new company called Hemp Fast Forward. If you want to follow along with him, he's got probably about 20 years of decortication natural fiber research under his belt. And he's one of the best experts we know right now when it comes to looking into these decortication pieces of equipment and vetting them out, because there's a lot of equipment out there that's you just got to be really careful and do your due diligence when you're looking into these types of things, as there's equipment out there that doesn't always do what it says, especially in this industry right now. So another one is this D8 out of New Zealand. There's a couple groups in Minnesota that have been looking into bringing this piece of equipment here. I know there's a couple in Pennsylvania right now, but we've kind of we vetted it out a bit with our contact there at Hemp Fast Forward, and kind of keeping it at arm's length right now, just kind of seeing how others' experiences go with this, and really recommending to groups that they do a lot of due diligence, because this might not it might not produce the quality of hurd and fiber that you need for different applications. It really depends on what your end application is for picking your processing equipment. And then this group is Harold and I discussed with them about a month ago. They use this Cretes decortication technology out of I think it's out of Belgium, but they're using it in Canada, and they've put a bunch of AI technology in with this equipment where it can read moisture real time as the fiber goes through and adjust the processing parameters accordingly in real time as the stalks go through. So really innovative group out of Canada that's working on this right now. They're currently looking for funding to get their first large scale 10 ton an hour plant going. And
Riley, if I might, I just want to say to the group that this particular group is looking at the possibility of potentially having 5 operations in the United States. That's what they discussed with us here a week or so ago, and so we'll be in contact with them and see how we can bring maybe that kind of thing forward. But it was good to know that we have a company that potentially can do things on a pretty big commercial scale. So this is one we'll watch a little closer.
Absolutely. Another group, Power Zone Ag, and they're called Formation Ag now out of Colorado. Corbett Hefner and his group, and they build mobile decorticating equipment there. You can see on the left. And then they also do custom harvesting headers for CBD, grain, and fiber that you see on the right there. And they're currently working on a larger version of a mobile decorticator that can take on bales. This one that they have here, that's actually not the most up-to-date version. I think they actually just released a more updated looking version, but it's hand-fed stalks. So they're actually working on one that would be able to take bales and actually streamline the process out in the field, which is an interesting concept as well, in the alternative of having a central processing facility. And then just a low-cost Chinese decorticator. There's a group in Minnesota that has one of these, and it's very low cost and just a really rough first pass decortication. You would need a significant amount of cleaning and multiple passes to be able to bring this material to the market. But I think for a low cost, I think it's a good first step, and just to get playing with the fiber and understanding kind of how it works and how it reacts through decortication. I think this is a great first step, and we got some of the fiber from this machine and did some initial rope twisting and different things with it, and it seemed to work pretty good. Then Canadian Greenfield Technology, they have this piece of equipment called the Hemp train, and this it's made primarily for CBD plants, and so it takes the plant and it separates the leaf and the flower into a green microfiber, which would go to an extractable product, and then separates the bast fiber and the hurd as well. For a ton an hour throughput, this machine is, and that's probably on the high end, this is a $1.5 million capital investment. So that just kind of goes to show the huge investment that these machineries demand right now. And the race is really on to for folks to kind of develop like high quality decortication equipment at an affordable price to be able to be scaled up and be able to do, because 1 ton an hour in the grand scheme is that's not a huge quantity for any sort of production. You're going to need 7 to 10 ton an hour to support an industry. So to be able to bring the cost of that processing equipment down, or it will be important, and I think something that a lot of different groups are looking at innovating towards. Then this is the decorticator that AURI has purchased from the Composites Innovation Center up in Winnipeg. They ran this piece of equipment for about 10 years. And it's originally from Czech Republic, and it's CZ Tech is the group. And we have just proud to say that we just got this all set up, and it's looking very similar to this picture now in our own lab. We just got our electrician that's doing the kind of the finishing touches on it. We're getting it hooked up, and it hopefully will be operational here in the next month. And so we're just really excited to have this. It'll be kind of the first of its kind here in the Midwest at a research scale that can do pretty good decortication. It's a series of pickers and rollers that is the theory behind it. And it may require multiple passes, but it really depends on the retting and the variety of fiber going through. And we're just ready to learn all about it and be able to produce small amounts of fiber and hurd for groups that are here in Minnesota to either implement into new products or implement into existing products to improve the performance and the bio-based content of products. So we got a number of groups already contacting us interested in getting some fiber for their uses. So lots of project interest already, and I think it's going to be a big deal here, and we're excited to get that in operation shortly. And this is Dr. Denis Rowe out of the National Research Center in Quebec, and he's been running this piece of equipment for probably 15 plus years. And he's just provided a lot of really good insight and helping us get this set up and kind of hit the ground running, so we don't, so we don't have to play around with things too much and can kind of have a really good setup going into it. He's invited us out to see the modifications he's made to this equipment, and he's been able to support product development for fiber in a number of different industries with this equipment. And he's got a cleaning device that he uses on the back end, for example, that we're actually going to be looking at purchasing as well, so we can kind of support some even some textile, like woven type material markets as well. And then this is just an example of kind of an operation in Calgary in Alberta that actually these guys are just west of Edmonton in Attack, Alberta, and they have a 1 ton an hour processing facility for fiber. So they do all the decortication there. I think it was about a $3 to $5 million investment that they made for a 1 ton an hour facility. And all of their fiber goes to a group, the Biocomposites group, and they make different things like hemp grow mats and as well as erosion control blankets. And then the hurd, all the hurd goes to just biofiber, and they're a group that makes hempcrete blocks. And so I'll talk a little bit about hempcrete in a little bit, and what that all is. But it's just kind of a cool snapshot of how a fiber industry would work, and looking at what industries can kind of take those end materials, as there's a number of different products coming out the back of a decortication facility there. So this is a project. I mentioned erosion control blankets. We've actually been approached by MnDOT and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture to pursue an LCCMR grant surrounding looking into replacing plastics in erosion control and sediment control products with hemp fiber. So the project's going to look at decorticating fiber down in Waseca, and then we're going to work with some partners that can twist the fibers into a yarn to create the skins, or the skins of the sediment control log, and then also the netting of the erosion control blanket. And then we can use decorticated fiber as well for the fill for those products. And this is part of a project that MnDOT is really chomping at the bit to start replacing all of their plastic products as soon as possible in all these types of products. So they think hemp fiber grown domestically would be a really exciting opportunity. And if we can prove out the viability and the technical performance of those products with hemp in them, they're all over replacing 100% of those products right away. So this is a really exciting project that we're really looking forward to getting started. We're just kind of tying together the application for the grant right now and getting that in before the deadline on the 30th. But that work would start in about a year's time, and it would be a 3-year project. So just an example of something that that's real right now that we can start developing on with hemp fiber in the state.
I think, Riley, here we'll just move on.
Yeah.
There are a lot more products that are out there that can be made from hemp biomass. I want to move a little quickly because I know we want to ask some questions. So,
Yeah.
I guess you can continue here.
Yeah, so carpets, automobile composites, so fiber blended with a PLA or another type of resin. Certain car companies in Europe have been doing this for quite some time with hemp fiber, starting to gain interest here in the United States. There's just an example of a car door panel made with a hemp biocomposite. There's a group in Fargo called C2 Renew, and they've made a biocomposite 3D printer filament where they can, with PLA and hemp fibers, and they can 3D print sunglasses and coffee mugs, guitar picks, golf tees, and you name it. They can make a molding of it or a 3D printing of it with hemp fiber. So that's a really interesting group that we continue to work with on other products as well. Textiles, again, a lot of these are made in China today. But there's a number of American companies, Duluth Trading Co., Tentree, Nike, that uses hemp fiber, and it's usually a 55-45 cotton and hemp blend that are in a lot of these shirts, and they're all made in mostly China, but some other European countries as well. But bringing textiles to U.S. soil someday would be really interesting, and probably the highest value market there is for hemp fiber. Then just quickly, this is that just biofiber group I had mentioned, and this is a picture of the hempcrete block. So hempcrete is the hurd, or the inner woody core, milled, mixed with a lime binder and water. It's a super breathable material in terms of moisture, and then also it has a high thermal mass where it can hold on to a large amount of heat relative to its size. And so it creates a really healthy, cost-efficient environment for homes. And it's generally just an insulative material, but this group has made reinforced Lego blocks with it, where it's actually structural as well. Contributes to LEED credits. There's just a number of advantages to this product, and there's a plant that's producing these right now in Alberta that Harold and I hope to go visit someday soon when the COVID thing all blows over. And then hemp nanomaterial. So looking just quickly, that another application for this is a research group at the University of Alberta figured out how to make graphene with hemp that can store a large amount of energy per per its surface area. And so looking at applications such as hemp powered batteries and phones and different things like that is another realm of possibility. There's groups that are actually looking at, that we've seen business plans on to do a graphene plant with the fiber. And it's would be a really interesting application, as you can use kind of the lower end fibers for this process, and then you can keep your higher end fibers for either biocomposites or textiles. Couple groups out of Manitoba that we've had the opportunity to learn with, but I'll skip over that.
I just wanted to mention here, Riley, we are working with Minnesota companies. This happens to be a company in central part of the state of Minnesota, already looking at a hemp fiber facility. This one would take fiber from the hemp plant and would make a number of the things that Riley mentioned, from the hemp, the hurd, and the insulation and so forth. So just wanted to show you this because it's becoming real in Minnesota, that we're already starting to put brick and mortar on the ground in some of these facilities.
So yeah, overall point on the fiber is that really there's no processing facilities right now in Minnesota. There's groups doing feasibility studies that we are participating in pretty closely. We really got to kind of develop markets and processing kind of almost alongside each other. So we think that AURI getting this small scale decorticator is really going to play into that development of end markets here in Minnesota. And then we can kind of work with these investors that have interest, and hopefully there'll be an investment made in the processing facility in the near future. CBD, Harold, do you want to talk CBD?
Well, we won't spend a lot of time on CBD, but this has been the hot thing the last couple of years in Minnesota. There were a lot of fields grown. It was processed at extractors here in Minnesota. I think there'll be a number of acres again this year. The market's got to find its way through. There was very high profits to be made early. It's been mitigated some, so we have to just discover it all. And AURI has been working with growers on how to dry it, handle it, and get it into a stage where it can be handled in the processing side of it. And Riley, let's not talk about the economics right now. They're changing. But we have a lot of projects at AURI, from hempcrete research all the way to the fiber, to cleaning and the feed. And there's more and more coming into the pipeline every day. And across the nation, there's lots of AURI has discovered a lot of places in the United States that are getting infrastructure. We didn't look at them all exhaustively, but I just wanted to show this, that there indeed is investment being made in this industry. AURI has ability to test hemp, and we are an approved lab with the Minnesota Department of Ag for research, development, and testing. So we can test for THC, CBD, proteins, fats, and a whole host of other things. So there you go. And we like to say that it ain't what you know, no, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that ain't so. There's a lot of things in the hemp industry we need to discover and find out. So Riley, you can go to the last slide. We are very excited to be working in this space. Be very happy to take some questions from the group, and certainly you can get a hold of us at those contacts that are on the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers, Harold and Riley from the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. And thank you also our sponsors, CoBank and CHS.